Do you make the guys in your crew and your teammates, do you make them call you doctor?
Of course not. No. I'm Preston to everybody, and the only time I need to be doctor now is if I give a talk somewhere or in the professional setting that I still am involved in to some extent. But no, I'm just one of the guys here.
Yeah. Now, with that said, you do bring a certain level of expertise in a different field than racing, obviously. But I hear that you've been able to contribute some of that expertise back into this field. Can you talk about that at all?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I one of the things that I have been aware of through my professional career, and then in my own experiences, having driven race cars now for a few years, and part of driving race cars, unfortunately, is also crashing race cars. It's the two things go together. They are inextricable, and so head injury is a big part of driving race cars, unfortunately, and the cars are unbelievably safe. They protect us, even the open wheel cars, but especially these sedans and GT cars. They protect us amazingly well from most injuries that we can sustain. Yeah. But the one thing that you can still easily sustain in a race car crash is what's called a mild traumatic brain injury, or concussion. Okay. And there's a lot of evidence now, as most people are aware, from football players in the NFL and hockey players in the NHL, other sports, that the effects of repeated head injuries are cumulative. Right. And especially given that race car drivers start so young now, they start as go-karters, and they're crashing from a very young age, and a lot of these folks will have accumulated, the younger guys even, will have already accumulated several concussion events by now. There's a lot of evidence that if you have a second concussion before the first one has healed, it magnifies the persistent effects that may occur from that concussion that has occurred. So because of all that, I have been interested in trying to bring greater awareness of mild traumatic brain injury to the motorsports. IMSA has, as part of NASCAR now, has in corporate wise, has brought a version of that kind of screening to motorsports with the impact test. Right. The impact test is a fine test, and it's administered in a controlled setting. It takes a good bit of time to administer, and it's a bit of a challenge to test people at the racetrack after they've been injured. That makes it a bit of a barrier to retesting people. You have to decide whether there's enough likelihood they've been injured that you would go ahead and retest them. I happen to be acquainted with some folks who've done some research on a test called the King-DeVick test, which is a test of eye movements and reading and attention that is very quick, can be administered by use of an iPad or on paper and pencil if you don't have that, with a hand timer. And it's a very effective way of screening people for the occurrence of a closed head injury with concussion symptoms. So the series was very willing to consider bringing this into the series, Pirelli World Challenge. Greg Gill, Marcus Hasselgrove, Peter Roberts, the chief steward. It took some time to gather the personnel resources to make that happen, but in the past year they have brought that into being. And as of this weekend, we are now testing all drivers before the first track session, and we're retesting every driver who has any kind of on-track event. So we're making sure that if they have an event on track, they are, and this includes me, if we have an event on track, we are retested. If we show indications of having had a concussion, we are removed from all participation, and at least 3 weeks time, and we have to then go through some follow-up testing in order to make sure that we've recovered before we can come back to a World Challenge. We advise people not to drive in any other setting, but we can't enforce that. It's not like a state boxing authority that can communicate with another state boxing authority or whatever. But I'm very grateful to World Challenge that they brought this into being, and the people in the med crew here in Pirelli World Challenge have absorbed it as one of their duties, and it's been really exciting to see that come up and running.
That's great. So essentially everyone has to take a baseline test, and the cynic in me wants to say, who's to stop me from maybe fudging my results up front, but really your health should be incentive enough not to try to fudge that.
I think you're absolutely right, and actually having administered a lot of the tests to people here, there are some folks who I suspect have had that thought and who have possibly underperformed a little bit from, or even a good bit from what their maximum performance would be. The good news is that when you've been concussed significantly, your performance will drop off dramatically on this test. And so even if you're not wise and don't perform at a high performance level for your own ability, the test will still help protect you if you do get dinged, because your performance is going to be significantly affected. This test requires excellent brain function across a lot of different brain areas to do.
Very cool.